Okay. The town council meeting for June 14th, 2021 is called to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry, I'm trying to get my notes out here. All right. All right, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a short invocation before we get started with the roll call. Okay. Now, Carol, we can have the roll call. Wait. We do the roll call.
All right. Vice Mayor Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Councilmember Vicki Anderson. Is not here. Councilmember Andrew Gardner.
Here.
Councilmember Dan Landrum.
Here.
Mayor Charles Poss.
Here. Did anybody have a chance to review the minutes?
Yep.
All right. Does anybody have any objections to the minutes?
I don't.
All right. With no objection, the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is for the citizens' opportunity to address the council. Do we have anyone here that wishes to address the council? No one? Okay. On to resolutions. I should make clear, it looks like we have two sets of minutes. I only talked about one of them. So the minutes were for the meeting on Monday, May 10th, 2021, and the meeting on Friday, May 21st, 2001. So let me just be clear, no objections to either set of minutes?
No.
Okay, they're both then approved. Okay, the first resolution is a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into an agreement with the Humane Educational Society for the control of animals for a period beginning July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022 for $825 monthly. And the resolution does the math for us and says it's an annual rate of $9,900. And it's for a period, well, we already mentioned that, July 1st through June 30th. Any questions about this? Is this amount similar to the prior amounts? Any changes?
This is the same that we've had for the last several years.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Right? Or do we do a roll call?
Yeah, you can do it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No? Okay, this resolution is approved. Our motion is approved. The next resolution is a resolution authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract with Johnson, Murphy, and Wright, PC, to audit town accounts from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2021, and to provide payment for municipal auditing services performed on town accounts for that time period not to exceed $27,220 and 0/100. $27,220. Anybody have any questions about this one?
Got a couple.
Okay.
How many years have we used Johnson, Murphy, and Wright? Is it on? No? Can you hear me?
Let me see it.
It's got green.
Yeah, you're on.
I'm just too quiet. How many years in a row have we used Johnston, Murphy, and Wright now consecutively?
I don't know the exact number. I would estimate in at least 15 years.
Okay.
I would say, what was it, last year or the year before we investigated
It's 2.
to expand it or to go with it, maybe another source, and nobody could touch them.
Okay.
Price-wise or skill-wise?
I think both, my personal opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. The question that always comes up, and we discussed it ad nauseum before, is if you go with somebody who works with you, they know your systems, and if they're hard, and these guys are hard. And if you go with somebody new, you're probably more likely for something to get missed.
Okay.
And would make it infinitely more complex for accounting to kind of train somebody again. So, yeah.
And they're well respected, utilized by a vast majority of communities in our area.
I move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Andrew, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I do. So this is for kind of the annual audit. It's my understanding they'll have to pass some sort of opinion on our use of the coronavirus relief funds. Will that be an additional amount, or will that be part of the normal audit?
They established the contract parameters. The contract is standard. They set the amount. It goes into the stakeholder system, and then we have to go in and sign on approval. So it's a very consistent and standard process. There's a provision for a single audit. If certain parameters are met, we have to have that, but that price is included in this. To my knowledge, there's nothing specific to the relief funds that would change the audit.
Are you asking,
If there'd be another need later in addition to the 27,000.
an audit on top of the regular audit to
Exactly,
audit how
yeah.
we're using those
To
funds?
audit, yeah. Yeah.
As Boyd was saying, that is included in this.
Okay, that's like we can.
The single audit that he's talking about would be if we fall within the parameters that they have to do a grant audit, which
Got
is
it. Okay.
probably what you're discussing now.
Okay. So what you're saying is grant audits are included in the price?
There is a single grant audit included.
Okay.
One, yeah.
Oh, so if we have more than one grant, then it's not included, but this one would be if this were the grant.
We haven't had to do one since I've been here.
Okay.
You're right, because of the amount, there might be one coming up, but
Yeah.
we haven't run into that situation yet, so.
All right. Any other questions? Anyone? All right, we have a motion and a second. So if have no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right, motion is granted.
Charlie, can I have just a real quick point of order?
Yes, sir.
Because it seemed like it was awkward a moment ago. I think, and Harry can verify this, but the order that we do it, if there's not a motion, there's not a discussion, unless there needs to be some preliminary.
That's what I was asking for, actually, just whether we needed Boyd to explain what this was about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just,
Sorry, yeah.
no, that's okay. Yeah.
No problem, we got there.
You straightened me out.
All right. That takes care of our resolutions. Now we're on to ordinances. The first and only ordinance is an ordinance to temporarily continue the fiscal year 2020-2021 annual operating budget of the town of Signal Mountain, Tennessee for fiscal year 2021 through 2022. We talked about this at our budget meeting. continuation budget while we work on the other budget for the current year or upcoming year. So do we need any discussion, or preliminary discussion about this? Anyone? I think we all know what we're doing here. So do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Do we have a second?
Second?
All right, do we need any discussion on this? Okay.
Can we just talk about the timeline?
Yeah,
for a
that's a
minute,
good
just to get
idea.
it clear with all of us?
Yeah.
So,
One of the things that we're waiting on is the tax rate, certified tax rate from the state. We're expecting that by mid-July. We will have to have the budget adopted by the end of August. In that period of time, then we would need to nail down any remaining questions on the budget itself.
Wait, we're waiting on what again?
Pardon?
We're waiting on what again?
The certified tax rate. With the reassessments being this year, our revenue can't increase based on the same properties. So they'll have to adjust our tax rate. That goes to the comptroller's office. They certify it, and then we get that back. We will see growth, but only as we would if there weren't a reassessment. So new houses and things like that, we'll still see a little bit of increase, but the increased assessed value of the properties in the town can't automatically result in additional revenue. So they set the tax rate that keeps that neutral, and then we have to adopt that, or by a specific process, choose to adopt a different rate.
Okay. I was thinking we were waiting on the salary survey as well.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Where do we stand on that?
We have, I'm still going to touch on that in my report later, but we have completed everything on our end. All the department heads have met with Mr. Thompson via Zoom, discussed their staffing, their positions and everything. I've done the same. After that, I met with him again, went over any additional information he needed. They have all of our job descriptions, our current pay plan and everything. I expect to be able to discuss some preliminary information with him sometime this week. So I'm hoping that perhaps the following week we'll have a report to review.
Okay. Good.
and where does that fall before our next council meeting?
We are,
What's the date? Shall we meet the 28th?
right. So that would give us time. As soon as I know that we'll have the report, then I'll work to schedule a personnel committee meeting as soon as possible, in hopes that they could review it ahead of council. But either way, is the first council meeting that we have, we'll get that to you. Hopefully, they'll have time to review it ahead of that.
Yeah, the personnel committee has been holding off until that comes in to have another meeting, so we're overdue for that too.
Do y'all want to, you could always set a meeting, and if it comes in beforehand, great. If it doesn't, you can reschedule it to a later date. That way everybody can have a couple of weeks to get their schedules, make sure we got the right day, rather than waiting to the report and then trying to schedule a meeting. So maybe,
There are a couple of factors also with some of the members on the personnel committee meeting not wanting to meet publicly.
In person.
No, I mean-
Not necessarily publicly, but just
Yeah,
being
in person. In
because-
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry about that.
no, I was just suggesting,
Yeah.
so that everybody has more time, you could say, hey, tomorrow you could just contact everybody and say, what's a good day to meet late in the week
Yeah,
before our next meeting.
like a week from this Thursday, maybe?
Yeah, and that way everybody can have lots of advance notice, rather than saying, when the report comes in, calling everybody and saying, what's your availability over the next day?
Yeah.
That way everybody can plan ahead. So, and if the report doesn't come in, y'all can cancel the meeting and reschedule it for a later date. I'm just a suggestion.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, Thank you for the update on the status of that report. When did we request that report? Or when did we ask them to prepare it?
I don't remember exactly. It was several weeks ago, but at that point, we knew we were several projects back on their list, so.
Okay,
We haven't voted yet.
we haven't voted, right? Does anybody else have any other questions? Any other discussion needed? Okay, we'll vote now.
But I just thought of one other thing. And
Yes.
I think I mentioned this last time too. As council members, don't hesitate to call them. They're super helpful and they're open to phone calls from us if we have questions about the budget. Johnston Murphy.
Oh, okay, this is back to the auditors.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just forgot to mention that a while ago. They're really helpful. They help.
Like what kind of, I don't know if you've called them about
I
particular
have
things?
called them several
What kind of
times.
things
Well,
will
when
they
I was
address
looking
for
at the
us?
budget, if there's something I just didn't understand, I mean, and I take that what I get from these folks is being accurate, but sometimes we want to go, help me understand, this is how this works. And
Right.
they'll send you to school a little bit and seem to be really excited about accounting for some reason and happy to do it.
All right. Accounting is fun, right, Carol?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, if we're ready to vote, we'll go ahead and vote. Is all in favor of the ordinance, the motion to approve the ordinance?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the ordinance passes. All right. We have several important things to discuss. I'm going to take them a little out of order, if that's okay. Because I think the municipal landscape ordinance is not really a deep discussion item for today, at least. As I recall, we talked about a couple of areas that we were wondering if it was really me. I listened back to our meeting. It was really me that had the problem. And the two guys we met with were going to go back and talk about it and then come back. And as I recall, somebody said that they wanted to talk to me about my concerns. They didn't want to address it. They felt like it'd be better for them to talk to me. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, well, you were the one who had a concern. And then if I remember the discussion, it was you would get a and talk to them about some wording or something.
All right. I dropped the ball on that then, but I also don't want to go and do that without you guys saying, yeah, go do that. Go talk to them.
Well, I think we voted that day and said yes to that. That was, if I remember correctly.
All right. Well, I just don't remember that well. All right. Well, then I will go talk to those two guys and anybody else, Ann, who wants to talk to me about that particular, or the provisions that we were talking about in depth. And then maybe by the next meeting, we can address this again and approve it. So
yeah, I'm the liaison just to bring, because it has been a while since we talked about it. So it's from the standpoint of those who sit on that committee, I think they feel a little frustration that it's taken a long time. I think the last time we dealt with this was in February, and we're into June now, and it's kind of waiting on us a little bit maybe to do something. And they agreed. There was some wording that Boyd had suggested as part of the overall discussion at that meeting. And the last meeting they had, they agreed to that wording. They said, that's fine. And there was remember there was a place in there where it mentioned the tree board, and they were wondering if it should be the tree board or an individual of the tree board. And there was that whole discussion.
yeah.
They decided to just table that.
Okay.
Just leave it like it is. So it's fine. So the only thing remaining is
Their participation. It was really their participation in private
That's right.
Development.
And it was an interpretation of all that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I think we could work something out. I mean, I'd said it several times in that meeting that I was all in favor of them having a seat at the table. So I think I'll talk to the two guys or anybody else. And if you want to attend, that's fine too. Just talk to them. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. So I'll talk to them and then we can bring it back at our next, let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
If you do talk to them and come to agreement on how to address that, if you'll just get that to Sam and I with what we've just got today, we can probably pull that all together and then actually have it on for first reading. And if you choose not to, that's fine, but we can try to get it pulled together so we can go ahead and move forward with it.
Okay. I will do that. And if you're listening out there, it was Andrew and Joe. You can call me too, in case I forget again. All right, so that I thought would be kind of quick. And then the Rainbow Lake Charrette could be fairly quick, and then we can leave more time to talk about this budget issue. So you may want to address that, Dan. If you,
Well, I mean,
it's kind of an update. So,
Yeah, Boyd's communicated with Garrett. So.
Yeah, we started working on that, and then the staff planner with the development district that was doing it resigned and left, and we got that pulled back together. So Garrett and I started working on it. Last week, got basically just sat down separately and came up with a list of questions that we thought needed to be on there, and then we compared notes on that. And I told him what I'd like to do is ask council if there are specific questions that you would like to see on the survey. If you can get that to me in the next few days, then we can have that pulled together and ready to go out next week. And that'll be an online survey that will basically create the foundation for the charrette process. We'll put that out, get the input, and then from there, design the charrette to deal with those questions. And
Can we see the questions?
Sure.
I mean, I know you said we could give questions, but can we also see what you're
Sure.
putting together? I'd be interested.
Yeah, as I read the questions, because I had inputted on the original one, so I don't know, my input's needed again on that, but kind of the response that they came back with, I'd like to see some, maybe some more general questions about what people expect. In that particular case, and we'll talk about this a lot more, but in that particular case, you've got a park that in a neighborhood, and my mindset on that has been, it's kind of a neighborhood park in a sense, but it also opens up to a state, trail and to national stuff. So it's all really complicated. It's complicated by the fact that people kind of feel ownership of their streets and their park that are overrun all the time. So I don't think the questions as they've been presented so far kind of fully get to what citizens would like to see specifically in that in general, which isn't to say that somebody can say, well, I want it to be for people who live on the street only. Obviously, you can't do that.
And that was one reason we wanted to get input, was initially our focus has been on the problems and complaints that kind of drove this whole thing, which is parking and traffic and all of that. But I think we probably should take the opportunity to expand that. Yeah. So that's kind of where we focused on the front, but I'd like to see what other areas you guys would like to bring into that mix, and then we can get it pulled together.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Because like the trail maintenance and some of the other, long-term, big picture things are, since we're doing it, we might as well include feedback on some of those items as well.
Well, tomorrow I'll send you what I came up with and what Garrett came up with, and a lot of them are similar, ask the same thing different ways and stuff, but that kind of what we came up with. And then, if like towards the end of the week, you can give me whatever else you want in there. We'll have it pulled together and get it up online.
Okay, thank you. My brother-in-law was in town last week and told me that he decided to watch one of our meetings so he could feel like he could talk to me at the town council. I guess he watched one of our first ones where we were talking about I was concerned about the garbage over there, and I have noticed that there's no garbage anymore. They took the garbage cans away, but it's like I don't know where all the garbage goes, because there's 2 garbage cans on the street that never have anything in them, and then the garbage cans that are there, but the place is spotless. So something good happened from that, whatever was done. Hopefully they're not taking the garbage down onto the trails and throwing it out there. But anyway, that was a good accomplishment.
I picked up some diapers one day. Maybe that was the day
Ooh.
you came by.
You're a better man than I am. Okay. So now we can talk a little bit more about the 2021-22 budget. I want to start off with a few things. I sent everybody. I had asked Boyd to give us an idea of what the major projects we had with stormwater and sewer, and he sent me an email, and I forwarded it to everybody. Hopefully you guys had a chance to see it. Because our first few meetings after the election, after Andrew and I joined, and Vicki, we had meetings with WWTA and Adam and Cliff, and basically it sounded like we have big time infrastructure issues that we need to deal with, and these funds will help that. And I think the town will, the citizens will appreciate that, because I think nobody wants to raise taxes to address infrastructure problems. So these problems, it's like the school system that, the buildings are falling apart because they don't want to raise taxes to fix them. And so they get worse and worse and worse. And over time, when the town councils before us didn't want to raise taxes to address these problems, the problems just keep getting worse. So we have to address them at some point, one way or another. And this is a gift given to us to be able to do that. And I think everyone in the town will appreciate that. Also, I've read a lot about the funds and how they can be used, and I have concerns about the initial thought process on how to use them, how to split the funds up. I will say this just as an anecdote. My wife is an accountant and had to deal with a PPP loan from her former place of employment. And they kept changing the rules every day, it seemed like, and nobody really knew what to do because the rules kept changing. And I have a feeling this is somewhat like that. And maybe that's dealing with the federal government, period. But they've done I'm going to get the names wrong with these things, but, there's the initial, I had a note.
Interim final rule.
Interim final rule, yeah. They got the interim final rule. And then the frequently asked questions. So we've got at least some documentation about how the funds can be used. In addition to that, the Tennessee Comptroller's Office is very helpful. And I spoke to one of the guys there and just asked him some questions. And so, and he was more than happy to talk. I mean, I emailed him, and he contacted me the next day, and so we talked. So I think what my understanding of this is, from our initial discussion, there's a limited limited type of employment situation that's eligible for these hazard pay funds. And the comptroller I talked to, kept saying it's just really difficult for Boyd to have to say this person is entitled to hazard pay, but this person who might work right alongside them is not. And he just, couldn't say enough how difficult of a decision that is and how hard of a position it puts you in. But we get audited for these funds. And if the auditor says you didn't really use those for a proper purpose, the federal government can say, give us our money back. And I don't know if they can tell us we're not getting the rest of it, but we need to be very careful. The word I got from the auditor, or not the auditor, the comptroller's office, was we need to document. We need to be very careful about how we determine eligibility and make sure that we have good documentation about it. So it seems like it's a little broader for the stormwater and water uses than the hazard pay, but again, I think we just have to be really careful and make sure we ask lots of questions as we go along to make sure we're doing this the right way, so that we don't get in a situation where we've gone overboard and end up having to pay money back to the government. So that was just an overview from me, just to make sure that we're being careful. And this may take a long time to really decide how the funds should be allocated.
Could I ask for some clarification
Yeah.
on some of your overview? You said you questioned the thought process. I'd like to know what questions you have.
The thought process.
I mean, that's what you said, is that you had concerns about the initial thought process. And so I'd kind of like to know those. Have you identified an improper purpose, based on your research on this thing? And are we being uncareful?
I don't know the extent of the research we've done, so I can't say if we're being uncareful. What I know is that, all right, so question the thought process. What I mean is, I don't mean that we shouldn't, award hazard pay. That's admirable, and we should do that. And that's what the funds are for. And I mean, the interim final rule and the frequently asked questions really make it clear that the funds should be used for public health and safety. That's probably the first question that we should address is, does the role of this employee go toward public health and safety? And it also, they tend to focus on assisting lower income workers over higher income workers. So, those are two extremely important areas that they mention a lot in the interim final rule and the frequently asked questions. So we need to make sure we're looking at those two things. The other is, not everybody's eligible. I mean, people that work in the same department, two people, one may be eligible, one may not be eligible. So that's another thing that we need to be careful about is, determining why somebody is eligible and why somebody's not. All right, I think that's the thought process. What was the next one you said?
You said improper purpose. We could get audited and have to get something back.
Yeah.
Have you identified something that you think is an improper purpose as the way it was proposed?
Yeah, I mean, I think that and I may have misunderstood the whole purpose. And, this kind of caught everybody off guard a little bit. And so, we talked about it, and obviously everybody went home and did their research and have come back to this meeting. But not everybody's eligible. I got the impression that this was going to be a bonus that everybody was going to receive, but not everybody's eligible. We have 70 employees, maybe, I don't even want to throw out a number, but not everybody's eligible for a bonus under the hazard pay. So
it depends on when they worked.
No, not even that. Part of it is when they worked, but it still goes more deeply into what they did or what they do.
If I might, and during a significant portion of that 151-page document, that's what you're hearing. If, as you get towards the end of it, it actually defines eligible employees. And in that section, it pretty clearly states that all municipal employees are eligible because of the nature of the work done by municipality to provide for the citizens, that in effect running a town and providing government services ultimately.
Well,
I didn't get that.
I don't get that either. What I read said face-to-face contact without being able to follow social distancing guidelines. People who come in direct contact with items used in an affected industry, or people who are considered critical to protect the health and well-being of residents. And it said it eliminates most small-town municipal staff members. I'm not saying I want to eliminate most small-town municipal staff members. I'm just saying what I read really.
Where did you read that? Because I don't think that's in the, that's not in the guidelines. That was in an article that someone wrote.
Well, this is the interim final rule right here, page 45 to 50 something, 52.
Let me see if I
addresses
can find
the
where.
addresses
Here, page 15 of the Q&A. You,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
happy
go.
to share it. Question, what criteria should recipients use in identifying essential workers to receive premium pay? Answer, essential workers are those in critical infrastructure sectors who regularly perform in-person work, interact with others, and physically handle items handled by others. Critical infrastructure sectors include, and I'm going to give some more background to this because this was important for my understanding.
Do we want to take those one at a time? I mean,
A lot of them don't
There's not a
apply to
lot.
our town.
There's not a lot that apply to our town because these are written for some pretty large places that are like running our own hospitals.
Sure.
Things
I
like
mean,
that.
but even in a small town, does mail count?
No, mail does not count. And that's actually a clarification I got from the Office of Comptroller. Because I asked that question, I said, does handling mail count? And it said, no. And I think this is more of, look, all this stuff right now, and that's what this is, it's vague. It's not cut and dry, black and white. They're still figuring it out and writing the final rule. I mean, we went through this with our business with the PPP loan. The rules change daily, constantly moving goalposts and targets, and that's what this is going to be. And so I think, yeah, it's a very difficult, and we need to make sure we are conservative, because what I did also read is that they can take the money back, all of it, for a violation.
do you think that as proposed?
Well,
there's a
so here's
violation?
critical infrastructure sectors: healthcare, education, childcare, transportation, sanitation, grocery and food production, and public health and safety, among others. And then the other background I have to that is that I'm not proposing that we do this, but in general, they're giving this money and they're saying you need to spend this for health and safety relating to coronavirus for your town. You can even give premium pay. Again, I don't think we should do this. You could even give premium pay if we had local healthcare workers in this town. We could give them premium pay of a private business.
Right.
Like it's saying that's what you're supposed to support with this money. So that's the intent.
Right.
And then this is the most physical evidence we have right now as to what the final rule will be. And so I think it's a little bit.
So,
And again, Boyd, you're trying to, I mean, this is such a mess. I completely sympathize and
Yeah.
understand, but it's trying to digest this. To me, when I read through this stuff and talked to the Office Comptroller, my feeling was like, our firemen are out there and they were going into people's houses.
Personal health and
Yeah, personal health and safety. Policemen going into people's houses. It specifically mentions sanitation here. You're picking up people's stuff. And that's what the Office of Comptroller kind of reiterated to me is what their discussions, I guess, with the federal folks is that the examples they give, which don't really apply to us, is like, well, a sanitation worker can have it if they're picking up trays of people in the hospital that have coronavirus. It was that specific. And it's like, well, we don't have that, but we do have sanitation workers picking up the garbage of those that have coronavirus.
right.
Or
and,
could.
And people
Yeah.
who support that. I mean, so if you're so you've mentioned fire and police.
That was the direction they gave me, and I'll pass along. I didn't have this conversation until this afternoon, so otherwise I would have passed it along sooner. But the direction was it goes down specifically to the employee. And the example he gave, which again I don't think this is fair, but he was like, so the policemen should be eligible, but not necessarily the person operating the
dispatcher. He told me that example. The guy I talked
Yeah.
to, Jerry Durham. And there's a couple of guys on this thing. I'll just give you their phone number and names: Brian Birkland and Jerry Durham in the Division of Local Government Audit, and it even has their phone number in this article. So I guess I can make it public too. It's 615-401-7841. You can call these guys, email them. I mean, I was on the phone with Jerry Durham. I thought I could have talked with him all day long. I was thinking, don't you have another job? But I guess this is kind of his job, is to talk about this stuff. But, and I see, there's a lot of town employees in the room right here, and I'm not trying to say one person is more essential than other, or one's essential and then one's not. You guys are all essential. And I think that one of the issues that Jerry, the guy I spoke with, had is that he hates to say, you know, you're going to get a bonus and a hazard pay, and you're not. But this is the way I think about it, and maybe it could make sense to you guys. You know, if we were a construction company building high rises, somebody might be willing to go out, you know, up to the very top floor when it's just, you know, some pieces of steel, and go out on the ledge and, you know, risk death at any moment to build the very top levels, or to put the things on the top level. They probably get paid a little more than the person who's only willing to work on the first floor, or only willing to go inside the building once, you know, everything's done, and do the construction work inside there. You know, I suppose, I don't know, but I suppose that those people who risk their lives going up on those, you know, high levels when it's very dangerous probably have some sort of premium pay. And so some of these town members, employees, are in that category. Excuse me. I'm losing my voice. I should turn this off while I cough. Sorry about that. So some are in that category, and some, you know, everybody has to work together to build that building, but some are in the position where they might get premium pay and others are not. So that's kind of how I was looking at it, in saying, you know, some people are going to be eligible and some are not. Everybody's critical to the whole operation, but some are eligible for a little bit, some sort of hazard pay bonus.
Would you be willing to ask the state, one of you guys, the state comptroller, for a comptroller's opinion that says what we're doing is wrong?
I don't know. We don't have a plan
No, we
in
have a
place to say this is
suggestion.
this
We
is
have a
wrong.
suggested,
We have a suggestion that is taking 66% of the available funds and putting it in infrastructure. So we have a suggestion that is spending money on infrastructure. We have 33% of that is finding a way to take care of employees who kept a small town going during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And public health and safety, you know, that's what
Well,
we're in the
Dan,
business
that's
of
what
doing.
I'm saying is that clarification is coming, right? On
Where?
where those lines are going to be drawn.
We
don't have it yet.
It's not, no, we have to make that decision now based on the guidelines we've been given.
I know, and that's why we shouldn't be including people that potentially.
might not.
No,
Might
but what
not.
you're giving me
Would
is
you
in a-
pay $500,000 out of the general fund for bonus? Can we afford that right now? If that's how many.
that
were
is a
ineligible.
non sequitur to what we're discussing right now.
That's what it could be.
No.
Well, no, that's not really,
It is a
because
non-sequitur
if the
what we're doing.
auditor, when the auditor comes in to decide if we use these funds correctly, and they say you didn't,
What
if
kind-
they say you didn't, then they go to the federal government and say they didn't use these funds correctly, and the federal government comes to us and says, give us our money back.
We'd like our 2.3 million back is actually what the law says.
Yeah, see, I don't know I don't know about that. Maybe that's true. Maybe they get it
More
all
than
back.
likely, you're just going to ask for the.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean, the point, I think the point is that we have to be careful. And I think that it was premature to say, here's how much money we're going to put out there for this. Because we don't even, we don't even know who's eligible.
That's what, I think that was my part of this that I felt uncomfortable with. I wish that, I know that Boyd's job is to make a recommendation about how to allocate funds. But I just sort of walked into the budget meeting not knowing that we were going to get $2.3 million. And I feel uncomfortable now saying, you know, whether I agree or don't agree or whatever, if we don't go with the 33% recommendation, I'm going to feel really bad about that. When it could be maybe we say we'll give them an extra $3 to $5 an hour during that period of time.
On what metric would you base that?
I don't know. I mean, I think we would need to, and, work with the state comptroller to figure out who specifically is, that we're sure is entitled to it. The other thing is,
The state didn't write
how long
these
do we have to
rules.
spend this money? It's not that it has to be spent within, how long is it?
Generally, it has to be spent by the end of 2024.
Right.
For infrastructure, as long as it's committed, it can be spent into 2026.
So, is it possible
Mayor,
that we could
may I step away for 1 second?
divide that money and do a partial bonus, and then, depending if, having a rainy day fund or like some kind of money set aside from those funds, if something comes up, we've got an emergency fund of money, and if something doesn't, then we disperse it. The rest.
Well, we'll do that then with the infrastructure part of this, which is 66% of it. But you have employees that kept us going.
But Dan, what I'm saying is we can't really earmark any of it at this point because we just don't know.
We have the guidelines that were given to us, and you can based on that.
Well, I don't think the guidelines open it up to everyone. And I hate that the first, discussion of this suggested that it was going to be open to everyone, because I don't think that's proper use of the funds.
Well,
and if we don't use them properly, the government can say, give us our money back, and we don't want that.
This isn't a matter of, what we think and hope and believe and all that. This is a matter of whether or not we're following the rules or
Right.
not.
Right.
Dan, I've read the interim final rule, I've read the frequently asked questions, and I've talked to the comptroller's office, okay? I feel like I'm pretty well informed. So if you want to do those things and have a discussion, that's fine. You asked what metrics that we're basing something on. I would ask what metrics you're basing it on, because I've done the 3 things that I can do. I've researched, and my takeaway from that is that we can't rush into this. We need to be careful, because otherwise we could get ourselves in trouble.
Dan, it doesn't all
Let me answer
come
Charlie.
in at
Let me
once.
answer Charlie first.
So
Well, let me answer Charlie first. Again, I do want to hear what you have to say. My whole line of questioning to the town manager at the last meeting was about that. I wanted to get really clear. Are we dealing with subjectivity or objectivity? And there is no question we're dealing with subjectivity on how, you talk about numbers and documentation. That's what staff did. They said, okay, so here's what we think. Now, the fact, and I agree with you, just so you know, Susanna, once an anchor is out there and is set, it becomes difficult to move that anchor. And that's how most of business works, because then some kind of anchoring takes place, right? Well, we're dealing with people now. We're dealing with people that, for the most part, we're going to find out really soon are already underpaid, who kept us going, who came in and showed up. Now, if you can show me in a second that we are violating the guidelines, I'm with you. But what I'm getting is, you're an attorney. Your job is to take a side and argue that side. This is not a court of law. This deals with subjectivity in people's lives.
See, I disagree with you. I don't think it deals with subjectivity. I mean, I think I'm not suggesting that we don't appreciate the town employees doing their job and keeping the town operative during the coronavirus, okay?
And I'm not
No
saying
one
you-
here is suggesting that we don't appreciate all of that you guys do for the town. Whether the salary survey indicates they're underpaid or overpaid or paid correctly has absolutely nothing to do with this, okay? This is hazard pay bonus for working in the coronavirus. It has nothing to do with your, whether you had the correct salary.
The amount that is, let's say everything that you've argued today, I'm like 100%, I think Charlie and Andrew are right. The comptroller, though I don't really agree with this, but the comptroller can tell you, I don't think it ought to be that way. And so you redline those, they're out, okay? You could still come back and say 100% of that FRF goes to those people that you chose and none goes to infrastructure.
You sure could.
It is a subjective thing we're doing, and you do it based on the needs. I mean, you can factor that in. People and their reaction, that's a real thing that we have to do as a council, or you get the town in trouble, which we kind of.
We're trying to keep the town from getting into trouble.
There's actually limits to per person in the law.
That's right.
So
You're
you
right.
would run into potentially
That's right.
where you.
But we are
you're-
way off of that.
And well, I don't know how many.
No, you can look at the numbers that are in
No, I
there.
don't know.
It's like 100 and, somebody help me, it's 150%.
150%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's the top end also. There's a cap on the amount you can.
Yes.
Right,
I mean, it's pretty high.
We are nowhere near that. I mean, so.
Well, yeah, but if this is not the case, but if the rule was like 12 people are eligible
Right.
and you.
And you gave them
Well,
the
you're
max,
wrong.
then
That's
then you would be
but
way
we're
over.
not. That's not.
Well, we don't
Well,
know.
then-
I think that's the problem, is we don't
think-
know who's eligible. And I
Right.
think that's step one, is to say who's eligible and then go to step two. But we got to get to step one first. We got to take care of step one first. I mean, look, the comptroller I spoke with is not, a straight and narrow thinker. The guy was beside himself to tell me that some people are eligible and some aren't. If it were up to him, he'd give everybody a bonus. His mindset was that way. But he also is trying to help us follow the rules appropriately. So, and I think that would be everybody here's mindset. I mean, we appreciate what our town employees do. And we're not, if we're saying, well, 30% are eligible, 50% are eligible, or what have you, we're not saying that we don't care about the other people, but this is not just a bonus for doing a good job. It's a hazard pay bonus that comes with rules. Read the interim final rule, the frequently asked questions, and talk to the comptroller, and you'll find that we've got to follow certain guidelines and rules. And I think the first step is to determine who would be eligible under these guidelines and rules.
May I kind of interject a little? You guys touched on some of the information that I worked from, and I think you may have been actually quoting from part of this. And on page 131 of that document, at the bottom, it talks about eligible workers. Eligible workers means workers needed to maintain continuity and operations of essential critical infrastructure. I think that's where you started reading. It talks about food production, grocery stores. On the next page, if you continue, then you get to any work performed by an employee of a state, local, or tribal government. And then it goes on with some others. Then a little later, it defines essential work, and that means work that is not performed while teleworking from a residence and involves regular in-person interaction with patients, the public, or co-workers of the individual that is performing the work. And then regular physical handling of items that were handled by or are to be handled by patients, the public, or co-workers of the individual that is performing the work. So that's putting those together. When it talks about eligible workers being eligible work being any work performed by an employee of a state, local, or tribal government, and then you put with it the type of work that constitutes essential work, that's where I get to, that's all of our people. If they were here working, if you were home, not the case, but if you were here in the office working amongst coworkers and you were handling things that had to go to and from other workers, and we had to get things in the mail and out, and when people dropped stuff in the drop box, somebody had to go get that and bring it in and process it. by those definitions that are contained within that document, that's where I get to the work we did as a whole in this town should qualify.
My suggestion would be for you to call the comptroller's office, because the auditors work under the comptroller's office. The guy I spoke with and his peers in the comptroller's office are the ones who supervise the auditors. These auditors are all going to have to learn what to do. And if they're being trained by the guys that I spoke with, they're going to tell you that not all employees are eligible. So my suggestion would be, and I threw out examples, what if we had a person that did this? What if we had a person that did that? I'm not going to, get into the examples I gave him, but sometimes he said, yeah, that would be eligible. And sometimes he said, no, that wouldn't be eligible. So not everybody is eligible, unfortunately. And I mean, unfortunately, but, I would rather us be over-informed than to take, one thing and say everybody's eligible and do it and find out they weren't eligible. So my suggestion would be to contact the comptroller's office. Let's go at this with great information, be more informed than we need to be, and make sure we do it correctly.
And maybe find out, what metric other municipalities are using in order to calculate their hazard pay bonuses.
Yeah.
I mean, there are many ways that you can do it. You can divide a person's salary up by what their hourly rate is. You don't have to do that necessarily. I don't know. I mean, maybe Harry needs to, as our town attorney.
As we indicated, where we started was with the understanding that the goal was to have greater impact on lower income
Well, that's what
positions.
that's right. But I mean, with the impact being higher amounts per hour for people who make less.
That's what we've
Yeah.
proposed.
Yes.
So if you have your higher paid folks get hypothetical number of an additional $2 an hour,
Right.
then
The lower could
the
get
lower
5.
section gets 4, and then the lowest gets 6.
Yeah.
Something like that. That's what we've proposed, and that's how we've run a multitude of scenarios to see what those dollars look like.
Yeah. I'm in agreement with that.
And this money comes in over 2 years and doesn't have to be designated to be spent till 2024. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So
But keep,
the way these go, and this is my feeling on it, we should do this research, as Charlie's suggesting, and make sure we are following the ones we know qualify. And maybe that's everybody.
Can you define the research? What do-
Talking to the Office of Comptroller,
But talking,
I would like Harry to, is that something you think? Yeah, Harry.
Well, and also, so we have an interim final ruling now. That makes me wonder, are we going to have a
Oh, yeah,
final
you're good.
ruling? Are we going to have an interim final? It could be as these things go that it gets more broad, and
I think
therefore
it
we
will.
can go into it, just feeling really good about it. But it's more narrow than that right now. That
So-
could change, but that's why I'm saying, set aside, allocate a percentage of it in a fund, and if we don't have to use it, then, then release the funds.
so may I offer a not fleshed out compromise in the interim? You're a firefighter, you're a police officer, you're somebody who works in public works, you were out there all the time. That was just a few months ago. What if they leave? What if they work here and they take a new job next month? I think the areas that you're 100% clear in, like to speak to Susanna's thing, like maybe if you think you set the areas that you're 100% sure in, I think you should pay because it's now.
And it's individuals, unfortunately, it's not areas. That's what, or at least that's the direction.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's where you guys are going, but that's not where.
Well, I think you should speak with the comptroller
I,
too.
see, here's the thing. If I go, and I'm not saying you did this, but if I go to the comptroller with a specific set of questions designed to get an answer that I want, I bet I can get something that I could bring back and argue. What
I
would
wasn't
like to
going
see-
in with trying to get an answer, okay? I was going in trying to find out what his thoughts were. I mean, I said, you know, here's an example. A person does this at work. Are they eligible or not eligible? Sometimes he said yes, sometimes he said no. I wasn't trying to say, hey, tell me no every time, or tell me yes
I
every
just said-
time.
I just said.
I mean,
we-
just the
we-
suggestion that I'm going in with
No.
a you know,
We
I know,
all
I
have
understand.
we all have we all have things. What I'm getting at is, let's go with what we know. If what we know is that the people who went into homes,
Yeah,
okay, we know that, pay those people.
yes.
Yeah, well, let's find
Now,
out who
don't-
they
I mean,
are.
Don't wait 2 years. Don't.
Let's
And
figure
then
that
if you-
information out, because right now, we don't know it. Who are those
I think
people?
we do know those people because they work for the fire department, the police department, and the public works department. Those are the easy ones that were dealing with things we had to do to keep it open.
Well, I mean,
you don't
I-
think so? Think it's more complex?
I feel like it's information that we don't know. We had a meeting on May 21st where we were told essentially that the proposal was going to be to give bonuses to everybody. All right? We weren't told that these are the eligible people. So we don't know who's eligible. I'm not disagreeing that we shouldn't, I'm not saying we shouldn't identify the people we know would be an eligible worker and address that now. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. I'm saying we should do that. That's great. But let's find out who they are, because we don't know who they are. I mean, look, it's
I'd
fire
like
and
to ask-
police. That's an easy, generally, fire and police is an easy one, right? But not, I mean, ask the comptroller. Not everybody that worked in fire and police is going to be eligible according to them. So, you know, we have to find out who's eligible and then address
what we
that.
do, because none of us are salaried employees, none of us get to sit down and do this stuff, we give staff direction.
Right.
So what direction are you giving staff right now? In order to answer your questions, I don't know. What do you need to know to get that answer?
I think that if we're trying to identify the easy targets, then we should find out who they are and what they did, you know, when they worked, what they did.
What would satisfy you that was answered to your satisfaction?
Well, I think,
I would like Harry to research it and
I want to know what other municipalities are doing and how they're tackling this as well. We don't have to invent the wheel necessarily.
Yeah.
We can get guidance from the state agency to say, this is what's acceptable, this is what other communities are doing. Your interpretation is correct, or or is different. I mean, I think we need to get guidance from the state.
I'd like to hear from staff now. I mean, you've heard a whole bunch of stuff and Harry as well.
well, let's hear Harry's.
I think at the end of the meeting, and again, I mean this with all due respect, that I stand by my recommendation. In the document that is from the federal government, the best thing we have to go by now, in that document, it lays out what workers are eligible, and it says all municipal workers. And it says what work qualifies, and it covers the work that we do and the environment that our staff was in during that period of time. And that's, again, looking at, we broke it down into administrative level staff, the department heads, and a few other salaried folks. That's one level. And then staff level that makes over 40,000 and staff level that makes below 40,000. So we have 3 tiers. And then we looked at whatever the amount is, whether it's $2, $4, $6, or whatever, ran those, and we can say this is what we can do with X number of dollars.
What is your take on what these two heard from the comptroller's office?
I think in some sectors, now, the folks you talk to are in local government, so I don't know that they deal with anything but local government.
Well, the auditors
But
are
this-
they're state employees, I'm understanding, and they give recommendation to the federal agency on whether we use the funds appropriately. So the auditors work for Tennessee. And
The auditors, I don't know if that's exactly, the auditors are independent firm that the state comptroller has to approve of.
Okay, I'm not saying you're wrong, because that was my understanding from talking. I never asked him specifically who auditors were, but my understanding was that the comptroller's office is basically training them
Are
how
you
to
talking
do
about
the
the people
auditing.
you spoke?
No, the guy I spoke to, I don't know who the auditors are, and I didn't ask him who they work for. But my understanding, and maybe it was wrong, is that they're trained by the state comptroller's office, and then they go out and do the audit, and then they report to the federal agency. But I would have to call him back to find out exactly who they are. And you may know
Well, I
better.
mean, maybe
talking-
Harry can call him back. And that
That's-
way it's
I mean, I
like,
don't
it's
care who
not one of
calls him.
us who is going to be voting on it. Maybe Harry, as our attorney, can call and ask these questions and get the clarification and, you know,
I'm glad to. I don't really expect to get a firm answer.
Yeah, I don't think
What-
you're
how do
going
you feel about, what's your
Office, but-
opinion from a legal perspective based on all of this that we've heard? I mean, you know, what's your take on
I've not
it?
looked at this at all. This discussion tonight is, I mean, Boyd and I had a very brief discussion when he started looking at this, but I've not looked at it at all.
I would like it. I'd like to know what your opinion is.
Okay?
And
And I'm happy to talk to other municipal attorneys in the area and see if their councils
I mean,
or boards have looked and.
Yeah, I would, I mean, I think that would be helpful.
To the extent that it's vague, that's just what I feel like as our fiscal responsibility has to be to err on the side of caution. And are we interpreting things like touching mail as meaning that it's essential? Whereas that could end up in the final rule interpreted differently. And that's all I'm saying. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they'll probably say, yeah, of course, like, you're coming in and working. But we don't know that yet, was my feeling from my research. And so if we went ahead and allocated and spent it, we could put ourselves in a very, very bad situation.
Well, yeah, and I think one of the problems, Dan, in saying, you know, here's the people we know are essential workers, let's go ahead and pay them, is that I think, to me, the process should be, one, identify who are the eligible workers, and then two, identify how we're going to allocate funds to them. So, you know, if we said, oh, we know these guys are eligible workers, let's just go ahead and give them some money, and then we found out that all these other people were eligible workers, and we said, wait a minute, we don't have enough money to give them the same that we gave the first people, then, you know, that's a problem.
We know how
It
to-
is not a simple process. I think if we were to say, hey,
That's-
you know, a third, let's just go out and give all the money out, we're doing the town a disservice, and we're not doing a good job ourselves. We need to be careful. We need to document. We need to know what we're doing and do it correctly. That's my feeling.
I get that. That's a noble feeling. If, and I respect where you're coming from.
I'll tell you, Colin Cowherd, the sports radio guy, used to always say he'd rather get the story right than be the one to first break it.
Sure.
And
But
I think that's what we should do, is get it right rather than be the ones to first break the story.
But if what you get from, first off, I suspect you can't, the reason I ask about getting a comptroller's ruling, you know, in writing, you won't get it.
Probably not.
You won't be able to get it because that's how, this is a subjective thing that we're
I
doing.
didn't ask for an opinion in writing. Maybe I would, but I,
Yeah, I mean, I think that would think, so if the comptroller tells you, I can't do that. And an argument has been made that we have identified who is eligible and it can't be falsified that they're uneligible. I mean, their eligibility can't be falsified. First off, avoid unfalsifiable arguments as much as you possibly can, but we're in a situation where we're into subjectivity and you can't. So if you found out today that you knew that was okay, are you guys okay with the distribution as is set?
I would say no. I
You
would
would
say
say
I'd,
you're not
I'd
okay.
rather get it right. I'd rather determine the eligibility
No, that's not my
and then
question.
determine how much is going to be paid in hazard pay and then implement the program.
My question is, I want to make sure, because you said, no, you disagree with the disbursement model that's been set at this point. If you found that that was all accurate and you knew we were safe, I'm asking, are you comfortable with it? If to your satisfaction, you knew we aren't going to get in trouble, because I can go back and look at the things, we got to be really careful. We don't want to use it for improper purpose if we can prove that it's not improper purpose and we're okay. Are you comfortable with the disbursement as has been proposed? And if not, that's your subjective thing. And that's what I'm trying to get to. I want to understand where we're coming from as to why. How would you decide 20, 40, 40? I mean, and if you did, why? I think anybody who's in that position, it's like what.
I don't like taking an allocation of a pot. It's a random amount of money given from the government, honestly.
It's taxpayer money that we all paid in.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
But it's the dollar amount, 2.3 million, is not specifically related to someone's performance during coronavirus, right?
Because
So we should figure out what that number is, right? That's what I think that approach, you're talking about the more general approach of how do you figure out, right?
The
how
pool
much-
of funds.
Yeah, well, the pool, or like, let's say final rule comes out tomorrow, everybody's eligible. All right, how do we figure out how much goes to it?
Yeah.
I like taking more of the approach of how much do we want to bonus this category, this category, this category? What's a good number rather than taking a percentage of funds?
Yeah.
I don't think that's,
well,
I mean, that's completely random. Saying we're going to do X% for this, X% for that, and X% for that is 100% random.
there's not one.
It's completely random. There's no there's got to be objectivity here. I think we need, and we owe it to the town as a whole
But it's
to
not
look at this
random.
very carefully and as objectively as we can. There is a small subjective component, probably, but you can put a lot of objectivity into analysis as to why you decided to use this amount versus another amount.
Boyd, was your proposal random?
No.
How was it not random?
I'm saying that 2.3 million.
We had three areas, and we're going to just give the equal amounts to each. That's
Because
random.
there's actually two areas. There's only two areas because there's only two we're eligible for.
Water,
One is
stormwater, and
No,
hazard
but water,
pay.
stormwater and water are water. There's two areas we're eligible for: water and employees. So there's two.
Well, no, I think it's three.
Wastewater.
Well, the stormwater system, the water utility, and the
We
employees.
don't have wastewater. We don't do wastewater, so that's not us. So what we have,
But even with stormwater and the water utility,
Mhm.
I mean, I read, those are broader
Right.
you can use them for more things. It's a much broader category. But even then, I think before we say, yeah, we're going to just put this money here for that, we need to make sure, run that by the comptroller's office and say, look, this is what our plan is. What do you think? If the guy's willing to say, yeah, that's good, then that's great. If he's not willing to give us an answer, fine, we'll have to, wing it and hope for the best. If we've decided and done our research and investigated it and said, we really think this is right, then let's go for it if we can't get an answer. But I mean, we should try to get an answer from the comptroller's office to help us. It's another piece of the puzzle to make sure this is done correctly. look, it might take time, and I'm sorry about that, but it's better to get it right than to just
Can
get
I
it
also
first.
suggest that we talk to our auditors, Johnston and Murphy?
And right.
Because they, as I understand it, will make one of the pieces of information the federal government will gather on our use of the funds will be their opinion on whether we use the funds appropriately, according to the final rule that we don't have yet.
Our auditor's
Our auditors.
opinion? Okay, yeah,
That's that audit I was asking about.
sure.
Makes
So we
sense.
should ask them what their thoughts are, because that'll be the major red flag. Like if they come in and say, well, y'all paid some employees premium pay that weren't eligible. And so they flag it. And audit. That's the first way the federal government would find out.
But to be clear, they have to sign off that we have followed the rules.
Yes.
That's all that they do. I mean, they're not offering opinions how you do it. They're signing off as to.
No, but I don't know. If
They're not gonna get
they're
into
gonna give us an
percentages.
opinion right now. No. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about eligibility.
So we have,
Sorry.
I mean, I think some of us up here think that we need to really do a lot of work to determine, how we use these funds. So that would be what I think we should do. And if it takes a little time, it takes a little time, but we'll get it right. That's my opinion. I would be interested to know what other municipalities are doing as well.
But
That could help us, certainly. But
Do we know that at this point?
No.
I don't.
well, certainly Chattanooga is getting funds. We can ask Chattanooga what they're doing. I don't know if any, like Red Bank or some of the neighboring communities are getting any funds that we can ask, but
Wouldn't you need to, I mean, it's not apples to apples on some of those things. You kind of need to find some similar cases to
well, I mean,
a town like ours that doesn't have a hospital. If we had a hospital, there'd be money going to
Right.
the hospital. If we had,
Well, they have an office, a town center. They have public works, how are they allocating funds, for those employees?
so the question would be, if you found out that they're allocating it in a way that you don't think is right, where you go, well, we can't do that. The thing is, there's going to be people all over the place trying to figure out what is best for their town. And
Right.
I think the work done by staff is looking out for our town. I'm with you 100%. Don't want to do anything that we shouldn't do that would cause us a problem with an audit. We've had the best ratings. We've had great audits for years. Something's going right, with all of this.
Mhm.
I wouldn't automatically assume that all of a sudden now they're doing something wrong, it feels a little bit like, I was like, wow. But, and then there is the whole thing of
this
general
isn't-
staff morale and
But this isn't
that's,
like,
it's a lot easier for us to mess that up than it is to make it better.
yeah, this isn't about staff morale either. I mean, it's about, read the thing, it's about hazard pay and rewarding people for working during the pandemic in critical jobs. I mean, the first part says,
But we've done this.
premium pay is targeted to workers that faced or face heightened risk due to the character of their work, that kind of thing. It isn't about morale. If we have a morale problem, we need to deal with it in other ways. So do we have a morale problem?
Are we creating a morale problem?
I mean, if this creates a morale problem, sorry, the first discussion, we were premature on having the discussion about money and hazard pay. So, I'm sorry if it created a morale problem, but, we'll have to fix that somehow. But, throwing out money is not how you fix the morale problem if there's a morale
Well,
problem.
this isn't you get a pony. you
And
get a
then this
pony.
isn't about morale. This is hazard pay. This is premium pay for hazardous work. That has nothing to do with morale.
And what has been proposed is paying premium pay for hazard pay, giving the greatest amount with that 468 to folks at the bottom, the least amount to folks at the top who actually were here, not working from home. So that eliminates people. It's not everybody. It's not across the board. All employees get something. That's not how that works. It's for people that actually work. Now, as I said, I don't want to keep repeating myself. I don't want us to do anything wrong either. I think it's our responsibility to give staff clear direction,
Right.
because we're gumming up the works by us just arguing about it.
Yeah.
with our
Well, I think
opinions.
what has been proposed, in addition to paying the people we know are going to be essential workers money right now, that's what your suggestion was, that's one proposal. Another proposal is to ask Harry to check in with other towns similar to ours or even not similar, Chattanooga, Collegedale, Red Bank, whatever. If you can, just kind of ask around what other towns are doing about this. How are they identifying eligible workers? How much are they putting toward this, that kind of thing. And really focusing on who's eligible, digging deeper into eligibility. And maybe that means contacting the comptroller's office and saying, here's my people that I'm wondering about. I think I know these people are eligible. Or maybe, Boyd, if you want to contact the comptroller's office and say, page 131 says everybody's eligible. What do you think about that? And maybe they'll tell you what they think about that. And maybe they'll say, you're right, everybody's eligible. Or maybe they'll say, no, you're wrong. And then if they say you're wrong, you can say, well, what about this person? What about this person? What about this person? And go down, and do research. Let's figure this thing
Well,
out.
at least if you do that too, if it comes back later where somebody's questioning you, we'll have a leg to stand on to say, we communicated with the state comptroller's office. This is what they told us.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's just our own interpretation of what was sent in the interim final rule.
Yeah, that goes into the documentation. The guy told me you need to document how you do things or why you're
Yeah.
doing things. So, that would be.
That's why we get clean audits, because that's how we do it. And
So I think in this
don't get me
case,
wrong, I'm not
yes.
arguing against doing any additional research at all. We're not going to pass a budget until early June or August, rather. There's time. I'm not arguing against that at all. I'm simply trying to make clear the basis for my recommendation.
Okay.
And based on what this says, I think it's solid. If something trumps this and we find out differently, then that's fine. But when you look at, we've gone through and looked at all these employees and know exactly how many hours they were physically at work during that time frame that we're talking about, and know exactly what this number of dollars, this number of dollars, and this number of dollars will be. And again, in terms of the budget itself, that's not even dependent on this decision, because it's a separate fund. The money's budgeted to come in and it's budgeted to go out, and that's it. So it is a matter of making those determinations. And I guess one question, and maybe in what Dan was trying to get at earlier, was regardless of how this washes out, what is the allocation formula that you do find comfort with? When you look at this and look at what the maximums are, the amounts per hour that you could pay and all of that, this doesn't even approach that. So it was not just a random amount. It was a matter of having three things that we really needed to to spend money on, and knowing fairly well what kind of funds we would be talking about to just give staff part of what's allowed, not anywhere near the maximum. So if that allocation formula or division isn't what you're finding comfort with, if we have some idea of what you would be, then we can start nailing down details beyond what we have, or providing you details.
I think our job would be to say, here's how much we're allocating toward this, and then you would implement that. But I think for us to really be able to analyze how much to allocate, from my perspective, I would want to know who you're considering eligible, and let's do research to make sure they are, and why they're eligible, and then kind of figure out the starting point of the number of people, and then go from there to determine the funds to allocate toward that hazard pay. That would be my recommendation. And if anybody else has another recommendation, we can consider that as well.
So is the allocation an important part in terms of total dollars that we need to figure out soon, or do we have a couple months and maybe a final rule comes out, or what's the time frame we need to say this much is going to premium pay and this much is infrastructure?
Again, we're not going to have a budget until sometime in August.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we immediately have to expend funds. The answer is
When do the
the
funds
amount of
roll in?
time it takes you to make a decision.
When do the funds roll in?
I'm not sure exactly. I think within the next month or so, we'll
Okay.
get 50% of it.
Okay.
The funds could be taken out of the budget too, if we feel like we're not ready, and then the budget amendment to add them back in, or is that not right?
No, if there's no reason to do that. If you don't,
I'm just saying if we felt
the
like we
being
were
in
ready.
the money's coming in. So we have to have it in the budget.
And the amount
And-
coming in is 1.1, right? The first
Amount.
amount.
Right, well over.
Yeah.
And so that's coming in, so you have to show that as a revenue. And we show it going back out, but with no detail and expenditure. If you don't spend it, it doesn't matter. So you definitely wouldn't want to take it out of the budget.
I was just saying, take it out until we know how we're going to disperse it, and then do a budget amendment to add it in. Maybe that's
But
not
again,
the
we
right
know
approach.
it's coming in, so it needs to be in the budget.
Okay.
Well, you could,
And
I
until
guess if we have
until
it-
you authorize a use, it's not going to be expended.
you have it coming in, but you're not authorized. I think what Charlie's saying is kind of the same thing. Don't earmark a use yet.
We have
No.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, have we given any guidance or direction? Or do we need to all right. I don't want to hog the conversation. Does anybody else want to say,
I think I have what I need.
okay.
And Harry, do you feel like you kind of know what you,
I do.
and I hope, you'll share that information, whatever your interpretation is, with all of us.
I will.
and with Boyd.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I think talking about this is good. Having different opinions about what we should do is good. Lively discussion is good. If everybody was up here saying they agreed on everything, then we might miss some other ways of looking at something. So I appreciate differing opinions and having a discussion. So looks like we've finished that discussion. Thank you, everybody. And now we have the manager's report, though we've probably addressed a lot of that already.
Yeah. Already touched on the Burris Thompson, and the work we've continued to do on the FRF funds. Since the last meetings, you know, I've been out some, but have had WWTA and 911 board and committee meetings I've attended. I'm going to ask Sam in just a second to give you an update on what we've been able to find out relative to the administrative hearing or the administrative law judge and being able to use them on a temporary basis. But also want to make you aware and kind of start the grapevines growing a little bit to get the word out. The folks that used to do the 4th of July parade and coordinated that have moved. And turns out that the gentleman that bought their business is also interested in picking that mantle up and running with it. He contacted us the end of last week, met with him today. Even though there's not a whole lot of time, I think he's going to take a shot at it. So there might actually be a 4th of July parade on July 5th, which is the day they're doing the barbecue. So if anybody is out there that has participated in that in the past and is interested, as soon as we get some formal contact information and everything, we'll be pushing that out.
Awesome.
Great.
Sam, would you mind giving them a rundown on?
I don't have a ton of information. I have the basics. I've been playing phone tag, unfortunately, with a lady in the Secretary of State's office with the division of, oh goodness, I just had it, I apologize. But it's the division that is over the administrative law judge area. And she, in one of the messages she left for me, did include some of the relevant details. There's a $200 filing fee. That includes 2 hours of work from the administrative law judge. It's $100 an hour additional past that. I don't have a whole lot of information past that point as far as what the process looks like to work with one of those administrative law judges. I do think we can only do that for a limited amount of time, regardless of how we move forward. But I will continue to try to actually touch base, actually get in touch with her. And, but I do think we've got some good information and knowing a rate and having a good contact. So however you all would like to move forward on that, we're happy to,
Well,
do that.
I was going to ask, do we have any pressing matters that need to be sent to an administrative hearing officer or ALJ?
We have some cases that are kind of waiting for a mechanism. So I don't know that you would call them pressing. Some of them have been around a while, but now that we have the ordinances and everything in place, we have a few that we're ready to start moving on, and we need a mechanism to follow through with before we start that process.
Well, can we, I don't know if this needs to be a motion, but can we agree that let's try the ALJs for the, whatever is the most pressing matter? Let's just give it a shot and see how it goes.
Would we need a resolution?
Do we?
What'd you say?
I said, I wonder if we need a resolution because we did have an administrative hearing officer that's supposed to do that.
And I think we ultimately need to have, because I believe
resolution?
even in the statute, it says that we can only do this on a temporary basis. Again, it would be the question if we need a resolution to authorize engaging and using them in the interim, and then we need to nail down that process. So we're looking at a resolution at the next meeting, and then some process after that. But how much time do you guys need to consider what you want to do?
Could the resolution be for 3 months and it can just be voted on again, extended if it needed to be?
Yeah, one of my questions is, what do they consider temporary under certain circumstances? But,
You're gonna say?
yeah, I mean, ultimately, if there's not some finite amount of time that we can do it, it would fall to council to decide how much time they need to appoint a new.
Well, my
Administrative
suggestion
hearing
wasn't
officer.
to say we're going to use them for 3 months. My suggestion was to say, we have this matter, let's refer it to the ALJ. Just one matter, and say, let's use the ALJ for this matter. I mean, even if we had even if we had an administrative hearing officer, we could still refer a matter to the administrative law judge. Yeah, we don't have to use the AHO, I don't think exclusively. I think we could refer a matter from time to time to the administrative law judge. And I don't remember reading,
Absolutely. I mean, what if it's somebody complaining about their property?
Yeah, I mean, if there was conflict
Yeah,
of
I
interest,
think that's
yeah.
probably true. You could do it on an
Yeah.
individual case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my suggestion was, if we have a pressing issue that needs to be decided pretty quickly, let's go ahead and send one out to the ALJ and see how they do. Not, necessarily to say we're going to use them for a certain period of time. I mean, but if they're not that pressing, then we can wait till we get an administrative hearing officer in place. So that was really kind of where I was going.
So just want to be clear from a legal standpoint, our ordinance that's in place says we shall do this thing. Does the ordinance say that we can use the administrative law judge as it exists?
I have to look at the statute, but I think even if we have an ordinance which says we're going to have a hearing officer, I think we could still go the ALJ route on a case-by-case basis. I don't think we're required to refer everything to the AHO.
I was just looking it up see if I can pull it up on my
Yeah,
phone.
he
I'm
might
just
want to
thinking if I
recuse
got-
himself from a case or something.
Huh?
He might want to recuse himself if something
It's got
came
to
up with
come
somebody
up
that he
from
had
time to
personal.
time.
And I believe these cases are handled remotely. I think it's all done virtually, if I'm not mistaken. I don't believe any of these are actually in-person
In-person.
hearings. But again, not knowing the exact process, I don't know how easy, it may be very easy, but I don't know how easy it would be to work with this person a case at a time. It may be some sort of, not commitment necessarily, but something more that we are
This is
engaging with.
This is what it says. The town may also contract with the Administrative Procedures Division, Office of the Tennessee Secretary of State,
That's-
to employ an administrative law judge on a temporary basis to serve as an administrative hearing officer. Such administrative law judge shall not be subject to the requirements of subsections.
So that's
Blah, blah,
in the
blah.
ordinance that exists.
Yeah,
It's in the municipal code.
right.
Oh.
So,
Which is based, I believe, verbatim from the state
yeah.
law.
So, I mean, it sounds like if we say, hey, let's use them, we can.
Yes.
So if there's something that needs to be decided, needs to be addressed right now, I don't know what we're waiting for. Let's go use the administrative law judge. But if there's not anything that really needs to be addressed right now, we can wait till we get an administrative hearing officer in place. That's why I was asking, about pressing. Do we need to refer something to them? Do we need to get something addressed right now? And, do we need a resolution to say, hey, if there's something you want to send to the administrative law judge, do it?
I think if it's in our ordinance that we can do that.
We
I
can
think
do
we're
it.
Probably fine.
Yeah.
I think I already do it.
Agreed.
So,
But again, our understanding was this was to be a stopgap until you decided who you wanted the administrative hearing officer to be. And I mean, that's fine. We can do that. We can move forward. But when
When do we?
will you let me know when that needs to be back on the agenda or
Well,
what else I need to do?
yeah, it needs to be back on the agenda. Vic, I'd like for everybody to be here to vote on it. And since Vicky's not here, then obviously we shouldn't raise it up now and vote on it, but we can at the next meeting. But again, if we need to get something addressed right now, we can. So let's do it. So I would just say, I will just leave it up to you. If there's something that needs to be addressed right now, use the administrative law judge. Does anybody have a differing opinion about that?
Not a problem.
And I
there.
will say this,
And
$100 an hour is probably a bargain, because I'll bet you the people that we're considering are going to ask us for a higher rate than that.
our last one did.
I never got to use it, so I don't even know what my rate was.
Good. Yeah.
So, if there's something we need to do, let's do it.
So do you do want the administrative hearing officer applications and resolutions and stuff on the next agenda?
I think, does anybody have a problem with that?
Okay.
Has anybody been able to talk to the people, the two guys?
Talked about them, yeah.
Yeah, I did too.
I have not. So
I
need
mean,
to.
look, they both sound really well
Yeah.
qualified. So
They
it's
both
not,
look, on paper, extremely qualified.
yeah, it's not a, a simple decision. And if you get a chance to call either or both of them, I think it would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else on the manager's report?
No, sir. That's it. Oh, yes, there is actually. Just recently, you mentioned we had an issue with the email server over the weekend. We've done about all we can with it. It's kind of on its last leg, for lack of a better term. I know that website may be a little more complex of an issue, but it makes no sense to me to take a chance on having to invest in another server if we're confident we'll be looking at a cloud-based email system. If you have any objections, we'll look at whether or not we have to do any kind of a proposal process or anything, but I'd like to just go ahead and get moving with that and bring you guys what we need. I mean, whether it's Google or whatever, I think we just need to. Yep.
I agree.
Yes.
And then we'll go from there. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, we're now at communications and reports from the mayor and council. Does anybody have any communications and reports?
I do. Rec board meeting, I guess the big main thing, Marion and Driver, well, this was quite some time ago now, but Marion and Driver, we're continuing to progress. I mean, at this point, it's probably even further along. I think Jared had said mid-July, probably completion. Is that about right? Or
I have someone who will know.
I don't have an exact date of completion, but they are hoping to be done within the next 2 weeks, I believe, by the end of this month, possibly even sooner. I know that I believe they've even put extra hands on the ground over there to try to get things done as quickly as possible because, I mean,
yeah,
they have other jobs to move on to as well.
got
But no,
other
they've done a fantastic job. They've been great to work with, and I do think that project hopefully will wrap in this fiscal year. We may not have all our billings and certainly won't have all our reimbursements, but we're hoping that will wrap up hopefully prior to the July 4th barbecue to facilitate greater parking in that area. But yeah, they're doing a great job.
Yeah.
So.
I spoke to somebody whose child plays softball who was asking about when the fields were going to open. And I thought it was August. I told him August. And then he said, does that include the time that the field takes to cure when they put the sod down? Because apparently you can't go out there and play on it right away.
Right, yeah. So after they've laid the sod, and this is not my area of expertise, so please don't take this as gospel, but I do know that there will be a period of time in which that sod will have to basically be untouched so that it can set up properly. It doesn't need to have people running all over it. So August is possible, but I think it may be a little bit later than that. I think we're looking into the fall.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not going to affect seasons too much. I think when we've as we've been working with Baseline, they've been trying to, and Jared and everybody have been trying to keep that in mind as far as getting our leagues back over there in the fall, but it'll be weather dependent as well. So luckily we have new irrigation, we have all the measures to make sure that the grass will be as healthy as it can be, but it will take some time before people can get on those fields.
Okay.
I just don't have the exact amount of time what that is.
All right. Thank you.
I may go back to my phone, do a text from Jared, telling me the
Yeah,
exact
yeah.
amount of time.
And then the other big thing being the pool deck resurfacing. And I have just personally gotten tons of thank yous, not to me, but to town staff for making that project happen, loving the new pool, the new deck. A lot of people, I guess, are over there tonight enjoying it. So thank you guys for finding that solution. I think it works really well. It's a nice change.
Great.
Any other, that's kind of reports from committees or boards, so we'll combine A and B here.
Right. So just on, I've got three. Just general, since we're talking about the pool for a minute, got a super nice email and I forwarded it on to Boyd, and I hope you gave it to staff. Somebody, when somebody calls you and says, "Hey, can I talk to you about the pool?" You go, but instead it was like, these guys are doing just a fantastic job. They were bragging on all the teenagers, seeing how close they were paying attention to things, how often they were cleaning out the skimmers. Just what a great job they were doing. That was so nice to hear.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff. This one, I'm not asking us to discuss it now, but I wonder how long we can continue to stack asphalt on top of asphalt on our streets, because they're getting awfully tall. I know it's expensive to tear them up. So maybe not this year, maybe as we start looking in future budgets, I'm sure you guys consider that. I mean, because you start getting some of the stormwater stuff we're dealing with right now has to do with our asphalt being too high.
Asphalt too high, curbs too low.
Yeah.
It's issue in some areas, and I know we've worked on specific ones where you just try to remedy this issue at this spot, but that tells you that you're going to have more of those over time. So
Right. Yeah. And it's all over. It's all over. I mean, yeah. So anyway, the other one was an item that came up during the last DRC meeting. There was a conversation, not an actual request for a mural, but not a request for it, but the possibility was raised about a mural on the side of the building. And how we would go about approving that as a town. And I asked Boyd what he knew about it, and he found something from, what town was it?
it's Murfreesboro.
Murfreesboro has in their code, and apparently it's just general. If somebody wants to put a mural up, what we can't tell them is what it says, because it's a freedom of speech issue.
As long as it's non-commercial or advertising.
Yeah,
If
because remember
you-
Coke's Bakery down in Chattanooga, they put a mural of a bunch of donuts, and I think there was a big issue about that, whether that was advertising or not.
If you Google municipal regulations mural, what pops up are a bunch of First Amendment cases and articles, and that's basically what it boils down to is if, as long as it's not commercial, then you really probably should leave it alone. And it looks like Murfreesboro has a pretty good process for that, and they just exempt murals from their sign regulations if there's no advertising content, and if it's not on the front of the building.
So
And, then it's artistic and thus covered by freedom of expression and so forth.
So the question that raises, and I think we might have to say something at least as to how it could happen. The DRC can have an opinion on your color of your building. Well, can they have an opinion on the color of your sign? I mean, how do we deal with that? There's been talk about color palettes and that kind of thing that a lot of towns have and we don't have. And so in this particular case, the idea, and it's a beautiful idea, is in a very prominent building as you're pulling into Signal Mountain to have a big Signal Mountain sign like you see in a lot of towns that you go in. That's all well and good. You guys all got a vision of what that looks like. What if the person who wants to do it in
Fluorescent pink.
pink Minecraft letters, so that it's, then you got the vision of that too, didn't you? Yeah. So we don't have anything that regulates that, and the DRC wouldn't know what to do or what they could do with that. So that feels very granular to me about getting into that kind of thing, but they asked if I would bring it, and I just brought it.
Yeah, how would you do that? Would that be a color palette regulation of some sort?
I thought for some time a color palette, a design book. A lot of towns use that, but we don't have one.
Yeah.
Could they just bring the design to the DRC and it could be an up or down vote? I mean, that's kind of subjective. I don't know, but
That's
Let's get into that First
yeah.
Amendment issue.
Basically, it says that if there's any type of approval process, it has to be content neutral. And when you're talking about art, color and everything so it's going to
it's in the
be
eye of the beholder.
very difficult to, now in a situation like ours where we have very limited opportunity for such things, an approach, if you have a business owner that's willing to do it and a property owner that's willing to do it, then you go through a process where people submit things and it's let the community decide,
right.
not the government.
And then you end up with your ship named Bodie McBoatface.
Yeah.
Right?
But so, that's going to be the question
You know
if
what
we
I'm talking
choose to go down that road.
Yeah.
And the thing is, right now, it's not addressed. I'm not sure if someone wanted to do it today, frankly, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't know if we could tell them they couldn't. If it met certain criteria.
Okay. Well, I
If we wanted to write something, we'd add it to our design standards, I guess. And I mean, I don't know, where would you put that? That's
I mean, there's even questions as to whether architectural design is covered as artistic expression.
right.
So all the troubles the lawyers stir up for things.
yeah. I think that's an interesting issue.
Well, you see a lot of those colorful signs and things and, on buildings and all over the place. People have taken their picture in front of.
AT&T building
Yeah.
downtown. I drove by it
Murals.
this weekend. I was marveling at how
Some of them
beautiful
are
it is.
beautiful.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I think that's something for us to talk about, but I don't know what to
just
do
did- I
next.
mean,
I know. I don't know what the next step would be.
Yeah, I don't know what the next step is either.
Maybe Harry can look into like the legalities of some sort of design standards.
Yeah, I think this is Harry's responsibility.
Well, I mean, that might be a first step. I don't know.
I think the question is, do you want to not do anything and just say that it's not likely to happen anyway? And if it does happen, does the DRC, is there some way the DRC, if you know that the sign is Signal Mountain, okay, just big Signal Mountain sign, that typical tourist one, think of the Wyoming sign and the, could the DRC now say, we don't like, you've got too many pine trees. We don't have that many pine trees. It needs to have more dogwoods.
I don't know.
I think the answer is no.
Okay. I can't imagine, but that they could, but I don't.
Yeah, and I don't think they'd want to. I think they just need to know what it is their responsibility would be. Because, they know length, width, height, backlighting, monument sign, and all that kind of stuff. And then you toss this out there like, okay, what do we do?
Yeah. Okay, well, we can think about it and decide if we want to look into this further. All right, thank you. Anything else?
The MAC is having a grand reopening June 26th from 4 to 8 with
saw that.
entertainment, and I think they're going to try to have food trucks or at least food, and it'll be a fun celebration.
Dan's playing, so
Dan's
that's
playing.
reason enough to go.
Yep.
I'm playing, doing at least one song again at Nightfall. This is 2 weeks in a row at Nightfall. We're
Oh.
playing with another artist this week, which is
Awesome. I know we have 2 open positions for the planning commission. Have we got any applications for those?
We haven't gotten any recently. We'll do another advertising push on that.
All right. All right, we're down to other business. This came up at our budget meeting, but just so this is in a, more traditional meeting, I don't think we're having the fireworks this year. I think it's a casualty of COVID. I spoke to the Lions Club and asked them why they weren't doing the fireworks again, and they said that they had to make a decision in February, and it did not appear that they could say yes in February. So it's too late for them to get anybody now. It's like probably too late for anybody to get anybody now. So another casualty of COVID, but after they're all gung ho for after this year. So, next year and years to come, they'll do the fireworks. Wanted to mention that, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Does anybody else have anything? All right, we can adjourn the meeting.